Computer, stop. Good morning, everyone. It's Mr. Vallejo. How you guys doing? Yay. Okay, today we are going to take a look at components of the laboratory report. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen with you, and let's go to the PowerPoint. And if you can write this on page 4 of your laboratory notebook, that would be cool and swell. So let's go. Looks like this. All righty. Okay, components of the laboratory report on page 4 of your lab book. Here we go. The first section, and there's 4 sections altogether. The first one's called the introduction. Okay, the introduction is, and the lab report is in Mastery Learning World. The lab report is worth 12 points. So 2 points will come from the introduction, 2 from the second section, which is called materials and methods. Then we have 4 points from the results and 4 points from the discussion. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to look for when I take a look at the lab report, and I should be able to check off 12 items. So the first item I'm going to take a look at is, did you say something about the main point? It says here, write 3 to 5 complete sentences that explain the main purpose or the main point of the experiment. Okay, so that's what you're going to start with. You're going to start with a statement. Maybe it says that maybe there's a general statement in the first sentence, but in the second, third sentence, you're going to say, you're going to use the word the main point or the main purpose. So write 3 to 5 complete sentences that explain the main purpose of the experiment. That's the first thing I'm going to take a look at. That's the first of the 12 checks that I'm going to see when I read your lab report. The second thing I'm going to look at is the very last sentence of the introduction will be your hypothesis. And so I would suggest to you that you use the word hypothesis in this sentence. You may even want to underline it. You may even want to highlight it. Same with the term main point. So main point, main purpose, underline it, highlight it, maybe even both. Hypothesis is your last sentence of the introduction. I would even stay away from statements like, I believe that we will, say something like, the hypothesis of the experiment is like that, so that you can highlight the word hypothesis, so you can underline the word hypothesis. All right, so again, 12 checks altogether. Introduction is 2 checks. One is the main point, the main purpose, and the second is the hypothesis. What do you think is going to happen? And remember, the hypothesis you're going to have to do before you actually do the lab. Once you understand what the lab is, but before you conduct the experiment, what do you think is going to happen? So that is the hypothesis. There will be some labs where we're just learning how to use the equipment, but you would still say something like this. The nature of this laboratory does not require a hypothesis. We will, and then in your main point, you probably already said that you will become more familiar with microscope techniques or something like that. All right, so that's the introduction. Here's the second section. The section is called the materials and methods. And just like you wrote in block lettering introduction, I would do that in the next section and call it materials and methods. Also for this one, if you're using a smaller comp book, feel free to write on the back of page 4 and call it 4B if you need to. Okay, so here's the materials and methods. There are 2 things I'm looking for in the materials and methods. First is called cite the source. The cite the source, here's an example, and actually this is, you pretty much write this sentence, and it says, materials and methods as given in the handout entitled, and then give us the name of the handout. But I usually also say, and by my chemistry/physics teacher, Mr. Vallejo, because I'm going to change things also. I'm going to revise different things that may or may not apply for this particular administration of the lab. I might not have that equipment, or something like that, or we're going to skip it in in interest of time, or maybe some changes that I make to the procedure. So that's materials and methods. Cite the source. Okay, so two things we're looking for out of the 12 checks and materials and methods. One is cite the source. The second is the short summary of the procedure. And I mean short, because you're going to have the whole procedure on a worksheet or in your learning management system, whether that's Schoology or Canvas. You'll be able to see my handout. You'll be able to see all the procedures. But if it was an experiment like for a science fair experiment or some individual research experiment that you do at home that I didn't give you the procedure for, then you would need to write out a detailed procedure. But for most of our labs, I'm going to show you what to do. I'm going to give you a procedural sheet that gives you the protocol for the experiment. And so for most of them, you're going to do the second one. It says if the procedure was given, create a succinct or short summary. So that's materials and methods. So now you got 4 checks already. 4 checks out of the 12. Thank you. So out of the 12, you have 2 in the introduction. You have the main purpose or main point and the hypothesis, and then the materials and methods. You have the source cited, and you also have a short summary of your procedure, just 2 or 3 sentences long. All right, this is where all the good points come in. This is your results, and this is what you record during the experiment. So, so here, what you're going to do is you're going to answer any embedded questions from the handout. Those are questions that are built into the handout. Okay, not the ones at the very, very end after the lab, but these are the ones that if you're doing a lab and they ask you a question and you have to write it down, then you would write it down in the results section. Let's go back to them after we're done. And so answer any embedded questions from the handout, or feel free to take a picture with your phone if I seem to be going too fast for you. Or wait for the video to come out and you can rewind. But you can do any of those options. And all of these are going to be in your learning command. All of the PowerPoint slides will be in your learning management system, so you can access those at any time. But the reason we're doing this is so that you can have this at the beginning of your lab manual or your lab book for easy reference. So answer any embedded questions from the handout. The second one says make both qualitative and quantitative observations here. Remember, a qualitative observation we learned in the measurement lecture. The qualitative is describing the quality of something. It is blue, it is rough, it is tall. So those are qualitative statements. It smells like lemons, qualitative. Quantitative is an observation that has numbers associated with it, quantitative. So it's a quantity. So a qualitative statement is, Mr. Vallejo is tall for an Asian. Period. I'm texting. But a quantitative statement is, Mr. Vallejo is 171 centimeters tall. His height is 171 centimeters. That sounds like a lot. I'm gonna tell people that. 171 centimeters. Seems like much taller than 5'7". So in your results, this is what you do, qualitative and quantitative observations. And also, this is where you're gonna put any tables. This is where you're gonna put any graphs. When you have information, probably with numbers, you're gonna want to record it in a table. And to look at the trends, I may direct you to make a graph of your quantitative data so that you can see what happens over time. Does the value go up? Does the value go down? Does it stay the same? How can you compare A from B? So sometimes you can best do that in a graph of the information that's in your table. So Tables and graphs. Remember, there's 4 points associated with this section. So this is an important section out of 12. And I didn't specifically tell you what 4 things I'm looking for, because for each lab it's different. It might be a completed table, it might be an appropriate graph with labels on it. It might be, did you answer question number 8 that was embedded into the procedure? Okay, so that is the results section. Remember, if you're not done, you can take a picture with your phone and you can take a look at it later, or you can access these later in your learning management system. So here's the last one. The last section is the discussion section, and it is also worth 4 points. There's a lot to write on this one, so I'll just leave this one up and I'll do the whole thing. I'll show you the whole thing because a lot of you write faster than other people. So there it is. In the discussion, again, 4 points out of 12. And this is where if you have any questions at the end of the handout, you would include them here. Typically, I might grade 2 out of the, let's say there are 5 to 10 questions. I might grade 2 of them as the 4 points in your discussion. And the other 2 will be 2 of these underlined items here. Because after you answer your questions, what you're going to do is you're going to write a discussion paragraph, or sometimes called a concluding paragraph. In your concluding paragraph, it says restate the main point. You've done that in the introduction. You gave us the main point. Now say it again in slightly different words. That's the main point. And then second, you're going to take your hypothesis and were you right or were you wrong? You're going to accept or reject your hypothesis and then say why you accept or reject the hypothesis. So the second out of 5 things I expect in a concluding paragraph. In the third paragraph, it says state any discrepancies. A discrepancy is a problem. So it says here, these are problems or unpredicted events that occur. These errors may be due to equipment or human error. Even if you have no discrepancies, you need to say that. We have no discrepancies while doing this laboratory. But it might be something like the equipment was too old, the gradations in the glassware were not small enough. There was a parallax error, so I couldn't see the exactly where the liquid was according to the line on the glassware. Whatever your discrepancy was, whatever your problem was, I didn't have enough time to finish the lab. There were too many people in our lab group. Whatever your problems were, say what those problems are here in the discrepancy section. The fourth one is, what did you like or dislike about the laboratory? You don't have to go into great detail about this one. Let's say one or the other. If you liked everything, then you would say, I liked everything about this lab, or I just liked that I had to work with my lab group because there was not enough equipment to go around, something like that. Did you like or dislike the laboratory? And then finally, the suggestion section. Your suggestions should be for improvement or for further research. And if you have no suggestions, just like you did for the discrepancy section, you have to say that. But you should have some suggestions. I think that we should do this in 2 periods instead of 1 because I ran out of time. I think the procedures should be rewritten because I didn't understand number 3 and 4. Next time, if I were to continue this experiment, I would do it with 5 different chemicals instead of 3. Now, those are all suggestions. So if you have a suggestion, then you could state it there. And again, if you have no suggestion, you would state that there. Okay. So these are the sections of the laboratory report. There are 4 sections of the laboratory report. The mastery learning, it's worth 12 points. And 2 points come from the introduction, the main point, and the hypothesis. 2 points come from materials and methods. Cite the source. and also a short summary. Then 4 sections or 4 points in the results section, which is the third section. The final section of the laboratory report is a discussion. And there are 4 things I'll check there. Also, typically 2 of the questions and 2 parts of your concluding paragraph. Woo! All right, so now you are ready to write a lab report. Do you have any questions? All right. If you need to watch this over again, you're certainly welcome to do this. This will be posted in your learning management system. And I'm Mr. Vallejo, and thanks for listening. Bye now.